The Grand Assembly Hall of the Celestial Harmony was filled with officers from across the galaxy. The massive warship served as the flagship for the Galactic Council, and today it hosted representatives from 20 different species. They had gathered for a routine military briefing before the start of joint training exercises. Commander Jathic stood near the front of the hall, his 4 arms crossed in what his species considered a relaxed posture. The Craxian officer had served in the Galactic Fleet for over 40 years. He had seen countless briefings, met officers from every corner of known space, and thought he understood the habits of most species. But the humans puzzled him. As the hall filled with officers, Jathic noticed something strange. The Velothians rushed to grab seats in the front row, as they always did. The Cytherian delegates clustered together in the middle section, speaking in their musical language. The Draconians stood tall near the viewing screens, their scaled heads held high. And the humans, all 5 of them, stood against the back wall. Captain Jake Morrison leaned casually against the rear bulkhead, his arms folded across his chest. Next to him stood Lieutenant Amy Brooks, who seemed completely at ease in her position far from the center of attention. The 3 other human crew members had also chosen spots along the back wall, leaving plenty of empty seats closer to the front. Jathic tilted his head, a gesture of confusion in Craxian body language. It made no sense. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors. Their tactical abilities were respected by every military force in the Council. Earth had joined the galactic community only 30 years ago, but human officers had already distinguished themselves in 3 major conflicts. So why did they always position themselves in the back? The commander glanced around the room again. Every other species had clear patterns. The aggressive species pushed forward, wanting to be seen and heard. The diplomatic species positioned themselves in neutral locations, ready to mediate. The scientific species sat together, already discussing the technical aspects of the upcoming exercises. But the humans just stood in the back, quiet and watchful. Officer Veldar, Jathic's second-in-command, approached from the side. The younger Craxian carried a data tablet and wore the expression of someone who had just made an interesting discovery. "Commander," Veldar said quietly, "have you noticed where the humans always position themselves?" Jathic's eyes brightened with interest. "So I am not the only one who has observed this behavior." "I have been reviewing the records from the past 6 months," Veldar explained, holding up the tablet. "Every briefing, every meeting, every social gathering. The humans always choose positions at the rear of the room. Always. Perhaps it is a cultural preference," Jathic suggested. "Some species value humility over prominence." "But humans are not a humble species in combat," Veldar countered. "They charge forward in battle. They volunteer for the most dangerous missions. Captain Morrison himself led the assault that saved the Kepler station last year. These are not the actions of beings who prefer to hide in the back." Jathic studied the humans more carefully. Jake Morrison was scanning the room with his eyes, not in a nervous way, but with clear focus. Amy Brooks stood with perfect posture, her hands relaxed at her sides. They did not look uncomfortable or out of place. They looked alert. "It is strange," Jathic admitted. "They do not appear shy or fearful. They simply choose that position deliberately." "I asked one of my friends in the diplomatic corps," Veldar continued. "She said the same thing happens in peace negotiations. Human diplomats always sit at the back of the conference table. They claim no special position, but they watch everything." The briefing began, and both Craxian officers turned their attention to the presentation. But Jathic found his mind wandering back to the puzzle of human behavior. What tactical advantage could there be in standing at the back? What did they see from that position that others missed? After the briefing ended, the officers dispersed to their various ships. Jathic watched Jake Morrison and his crew make their way through the crowd. They moved smoothly, never rushing, but they also never seemed to get caught in the crush of bodies near the doors. It was as if they had planned their exit route before the meeting even ended. "Commander," Veldar said, "I think we should investigate this further." "Investigate what?" "Where people choose to stand during meetings." "Humans are the newest members of the Galactic Council, yet they have proven to be exceptional warriors and strategists," Veldar explained. "Everything they do seems to have a purpose, even things that appear strange to us. If they always position themselves at the back, There must be a reason. Jothic considered this. His second-in-command had a point. The Galactic Council had studied human military tactics extensively. Earth's armed forces used strategies that seemed reckless at first, but almost always succeeded. Human commanders made decisions that violated standard doctrine, yet won battles that should have been impossible. Perhaps this strange habit was part of their tactical thinking. Very well, Jothic decided. Begin a proper investigation. Review all recorded interactions with human personnel. Interview officers who have served alongside them. I want to understand this behavior. Veldha nodded and left to begin his research. Jothic stood alone in the now empty assembly hall, looking at the back wall where the humans had stood. From that position, they would have had a clear view of the entire room. They could see every entrance, every exit, every face in the crowd. Maybe that was the point. Meanwhile, aboard the human vessel ECS Defender, Captain Jake Morrison and his crew were settling into their quarters after the briefing. The ship was smaller than most Galactic Council vessels, but it was fast and well armed. The crew of 42 humans had earned a reputation for efficiency and courage during their time in the fleet. In the mess hall, 3 crew members sat together over cups of coffee. Danny Carter, a young weapons specialist, was laughing about something on his datapad. Lisa Hayes, the ship's navigator, was reviewing star charts. Kevin Wright, an engineer, was sketching out ideas for modifications to the engine systems. Did you see the way those Craxian officers were staring at us during the briefing? Danny asked, still grinning. They always stare, Lisa replied without looking up from her charts. We're still new here. They're curious about everything we do. I think it's more than curiosity, Kevin said thoughtfully. The big one, the commander, he kept looking at where we were standing. Like he was trying to figure something out. Where we were standing? Danny laughed. What's there to figure out? We stood in the back. So what? Maybe that's what confused him, Lisa suggested, finally looking up. Think about it. All the other species push forward, try to get the best seats, position themselves to be noticed. We just hang back. Nothing wrong with that, Danny said. I can see better from the back anyway. And it's easier to leave when the meeting's over. Plus, you don't get trapped in conversations with boring diplomatic types, Kevin added with a smile. The 3 crew members laughed and went back to their activities, completely unaware that their simple preference for standing in the back had become a subject of intense interest among the alien officers of the Galactic Fleet. On the bridge of the Celestial Harmony, Commander Jothic had already begun his investigation. He pulled up security footage from dozens of previous meetings and gatherings. In every single recording, the pattern was the same. Humans at the back. Always watching. Always aware. It was not random. It was not coincidence. It was deliberate, consistent behavior across all human personnel, regardless of rank or specialty. The question was why. Jothic leaned back in his chair, his multiple eyes studying the frozen image on the screen. Jake Morrison stood against the wall, his eyes scanning the crowd. Amy Brooks stood beside him, equally alert. They looked like guards, but they were attending a briefing. They looked like they were watching for threats, but they were among allies. What are you seeing that we are not? The commander whispered to the image on the screen. The answer, he suspected, would reveal something important about humanity. Something that explained why such a young species had risen so quickly to prominence in the galactic community. Something that made them dangerous opponents and valuable allies. Something that started with a simple choice about where to stand in a room. Commander Jothic spent the next 3 days reviewing every piece of data he could find about human behavior. His office was filled with screens showing meetings, training sessions, and diplomatic gatherings. In every single recording, the pattern remained the same. Humans positioned themselves at the back. The commander watched a recording from a diplomatic dinner 6 months ago. 20 species had attended the formal event. The Velothians sat at the head table, proud and loud. The Cytherians gathered in the center, their voices musical and pleasant. The humans sat at the back corner table, quietly observing everything. He watched footage from a tactical planning session during the Kepler station crisis. Officers crowded around the main display, shouting ideas and strategies. Captain Jake Morrison stood against the back wall, silent for most of the meeting. Yet when he finally spoke, everyone stopped to listen. His plan saved 3,000 lives. Jothic even found recordings from the mess halls and recreation areas. During off-duty hours, humans still chose seats near the back walls. They faced the room, always watching, always aware of their surroundings. It was not just officers. It was every human, regardless of rank or job. The pattern was universal among their species. Officer Veldar entered the office carrying more data tablets. The younger Craxian looked tired but excited. "Commander, I have interviewed 15 officers who have worked directly with humans," Veldar reported. "The stories are fascinating." "Tell me," Jothic said, turning away from his screens. Veldar pulled up notes on his tablet. "A Velothian tactical officer named Sirfan told me an interesting story. Last year, during a crisis on Outpost 7, a human advisor named Lieutenant Chris Palmer was in the command center. The outpost was under attack, and the situation was chaotic." "Go on," Jothic encouraged. "Lieutenant Palmer stood at the back of the command center the entire time. He never pushed forward to the main displays. He never demanded attention. But he was the one who coordinated the entire defense. He saw patterns in the enemy attack that the forward observers missed. He noticed when junior officers were overwhelmed and needed help. He spotted a critical system failure before any alarm went off." "How did he see a system failure from the back of the room?" Jothic asked. That is what Sirfan wondered too. According to him, Palmer was not watching the screens. He was watching the crew. He noticed a young technician looking worried and checking her console repeatedly. Palmer walked over, asked what was wrong, and discovered a cooling system was failing. They fixed it before it became critical. Jothic's eyes widened. He was watching the people, not the displays. "Exactly," Veldar confirmed. And from the back of the room, he could see everyone. The commander sat back in his chair, thinking. This was not about fear or shyness. This was tactical. The humans chose the back position because it gave them information that others missed. "What else did you learn?" he asked. Veldar scrolled through his notes. A Draconian security chief mentioned that human guards always position themselves with their backs to walls. They never stand in the middle of a room if they can avoid it. Even during peaceful gatherings, they maintain this habit. "Interesting," Jothic murmured. "What else?" A Cytherian diplomat said that humans are excellent negotiators because they notice things others miss. They see when someone is lying, when someone is uncomfortable, when alliances are forming or breaking. She believes it is because they watch faces instead of focusing only on words. Jothic stood and walked to the window of his office. Outside, the fleet was preparing for the training exercises. Ships from a dozen worlds moved in formation, their crews working together despite their differences. "I need to speak with Captain Morrison directly," he decided. "This mystery requires a direct approach." "Are you sure that is wise, Commander?" Veldar asked carefully. "He may not appreciate being studied like a research subject." "I will be respectful," Jothic assured him. "Besides, humans value directness. They prefer honest questions to hidden observation." An hour later, Commander Jothic met with Captain Jake Morrison in the observation deck of the Celestial Harmony. The large viewing window showed the endless stars beyond. The two officers stood side by side, looking out at the cosmos. Jake was relaxed, his hands in his pockets. He wore the standard Earth Fleet uniform, simple and practical compared to the elaborate designs of other species. "Thank you for meeting with me, Captain," Jothic began. "No problem, Commander," Jake replied with an easy smile. "What can I do for you?" Jothic hesitated, unsure how to phrase his question without seeming foolish. Finally, he decided on the direct approach. "I have noticed something curious about human behavior," he said carefully. "In every meeting, every gathering, every social situation, your people position themselves at the back of the room. I am curious why this is." Jake blinked, clearly surprised by the question. He turned to look at the commander, his expression thoughtful. Jake said slowly. "I never really thought about it. We just do, I guess." "But there must be a reason," Jothic pressed gently. "Humans are deliberate in their actions. You are excellent strategists. Surely this behavior serves some purpose." Jake rubbed the back of his neck, thinking. I honestly do not know. It just feels right. Comfortable. Safe, maybe. Let me think about it and get back to you. I would appreciate that, Jothic said. I find your species endlessly interesting, Captain. Everything you do seems to have layers of meaning. Jake laughed. I think you are giving us too much credit, Commander. Sometimes humans just do things because they feel right, not because we have some grand plan. But after the meeting ended, Jake found himself thinking about the question. That evening, he gathered his senior crew in the mess hall of the ECS Defender. Lieutenant Amy Brooks sat across from him, along with Engineer Tony Blake, Medical Officer Rachel Kim, and Navigator Beth Sullivan. So the Craxian commander asked me the strangest question today, Jake began, sipping his coffee. Let me guess, Amy said with a grin. He wants to know why we eat food with metal sticks instead of just using our hands like civilized beings? The others laughed. Tony shook his head. No, he probably wants to know why we waste time sleeping instead of entering meditation pods like the Cytherians. Actually, Jake said, he wants to know why we always stand or sit at the back of rooms. The laughter stopped. The four officers looked at each other, then at their captain. Do we? Rachel asked. Apparently yes, Jake replied. Every meeting, every briefing, every social event. We always choose the back positions. Beth looked around the mess hall. Sure enough, the five of them had chosen a table in the back corner, even though the hall was nearly empty and they could have sat anywhere. Ha, she said. We really do. Why though? Amy wondered aloud. I mean, I know why I do it. I like having a wall behind me. I can see the whole room. Nobody can sneak up on me. Same, Tony agreed. Plus you can leave easily when you want to. No climbing over people or making a scene. It is a tactical position, Rachel observed. You can see threats coming. You can monitor the whole situation. You are never trapped. Jake sat forward, interested now. So we all do it for similar reasons. Security. Awareness. Control. It must be something we learned growing up, Beth suggested. Some kind of cultural thing from Earth. My grandfather was a police officer, Amy said slowly. He always sat facing the door in restaurants. Always had his back to a wall. He said it was habit from his job. My dad was military, Tony added. He did the same thing. Never liked having people behind him. It is about protection, Rachel said. Keeping your back safe. Being able to see danger before it reaches you. Jake nodded thoughtfully. I think it goes deeper than that though. It is not just about physical safety. From the back of the room, you can read the whole situation. You can see body language, reactions, group dynamics. You notice things that people in the front miss because they are too focused on what is directly in front of them. So it is an information advantage, Amy said. Not just a defensive position. Exactly, Jake agreed. And we do it without thinking. It is just natural to us. The five officers sat in silence for a moment, each thinking about this revelation. Something they had done their entire lives without question suddenly seemed significant. Should we tell the commander this? Beth asked. I think we should, Jake decided. He seems genuinely curious. And honestly, now I am curious too. I want to understand why this is such a universal human behavior. Maybe we should do some research first, Amy suggested. Look into human military history, cultural practices, that sort of thing. Give the commander a real answer, not just guesses. Good idea, Jake agreed. Let us spend a few days digging into this. I want to know the real reason behind our habits. As the meeting broke up and the crew returned to their duties, Jake stayed in the mess hall for a while longer. He looked around the room, noticing for the first time how every human crew member who entered chose seats along the walls or in the corners. None of them sat in the middle of the room. None of them put their backs to the doors. It was such a small thing. Such a simple preference. Yet it revealed something fundamental about humanity. Something about how they saw the world, how they navigated danger, how they maintained awareness of their surroundings. Back on the Celestial Harmony, Commander Jothic was still reviewing data. He had expanded his investigation to include historical records from Earth itself. He found it fascinating that human warriors throughout history, from ancient soldiers to modern special forces, all seemed to share this same habit. There was something here. Something important. A key to understanding why humans, despite being a young species in the galactic community, had become such formidable allies and dangerous enemies. The answer was close. Jothic could feel it. And when he found it, he suspected it would change how the entire galaxy viewed humanity. Commander Jothic sat at the head of a long conference table. Around him sat 6 of the most respected scientists in the Galactic Fleet. Each represented a different species. Each brought unique expertise in understanding alien cultures and behaviors. The commander had called this meeting to solve the mystery of human positioning. He wanted answers, and these experts were his best hope of finding them. Dr. Quintera spoke first. The Cytherian scientist was famous throughout the galaxy for her work on behavioral patterns. Her silver skin shimmered as she gestured with her long fingers. "I have studied the data you provided, Commander," she said in her musical voice. "My initial theory is that humans evolved as prey animals. This would explain their need to position themselves where they can see all threats approaching." A draconian scientist named Corval snorted, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Nonsense. Humans are clearly predators. Look at their forward-facing eyes, their tactical thinking, their aggressive expansion. They are hunters, not prey." "Then why do they behave like frightened prey?" Dr. Quintera challenged. "Why hide in the back if they are so confident?" "They are not hiding," Corval argued. "They are positioning. There is a difference." Jothic raised one hand for silence. "Let us examine the evidence before we debate theories. What do we know about Earth's evolutionary history?" A small Velothian researcher named Piprex pulled up a holographic display. Images of ancient Earth appeared in the air above the table. Primitive humans hunted large animals across vast plains. Humans evolved as apex predators on their world, Piprex explained. They hunted in groups using tools and coordination. They had few natural enemies in their prime. However, early in their evolution, they were indeed vulnerable to larger predators. Perhaps both theories have merit. "So they remember being prey," Dr. Quintera said triumphantly. "Or they remember learning to hunt," Corval countered. "Predators also need to watch their surroundings. They need to see the whole hunting ground." A quiet voice interrupted the debate. It came from Dr. Len Shore, a Craxian psychologist who had been listening silently until now. "I believe we are approaching this incorrectly," Len Shore said. "We are trying to explain human behavior through their biology. But humans are a cultural species. Their actions are shaped more by learning than by instinct." Jothic leaned forward with interest. "Explain." "Humans have thousands of years of recorded warfare," Len Shore continued. "They have fought each other constantly throughout their history. This means they have developed extensive knowledge about combat, survival, and tactical positioning. Perhaps their back-sitting behavior is learned, not instinctive." "Learned from whom?" Dr. Quintera asked. "From their warriors, their soldiers, their protectors," Len Shore replied. "If you study human military training, you will find this behavior is deliberately taught. Soldiers are trained to never expose their backs. Guards are trained to position themselves where they can see threats. This knowledge spreads through their culture." Another scientist, a tall Zenthari named Kixtar, added her thoughts. "I have reviewed human entertainment media. Their stories, their films, their games. In nearly all of them, the wise character, the dangerous character, the powerful character sits with their back to the wall. It is a cultural symbol of competence." "Interesting," Jothic murmured. "So it may be both instinct and culture working together." Piprex brought up more data. "I have another theory. Perhaps it is about escape routes. Humans are known for their survival instincts. Sitting at the back means they can exit quickly if danger appears. It is simple survival logic." "But that contradicts their battlefield behavior," Corval objected. "In combat, humans do not retreat easily. They hold positions even when tactically unsound. They sacrifice themselves for others. These are not the actions of a species obsessed with escape routes." The debate continued for another hour. The scientists proposed and dismissed various theories. Each idea had some merit but failed to fully explain the consistent human behavior. Finally, Jathic called for a break. The scientists left to get refreshments, still arguing among themselves. The commander remained in the conference room, frustrated by the lack of clear answers. Meanwhile, aboard the ECS Defender, Captain Jake Morrison was conducting his own research. He sat in his quarters surrounded by data screens showing Earth's military history. Amy Brooks sat beside him, reading through old tactical manuals. "Look at this," Jake said, pointing to a screen. "This is from a military manual written over 200 years ago. It specifically instructs soldiers to never sit with their backs to entrances. It says a good soldier always faces the door." "Here is something older," Amy added. "A memoir from a soldier in the 20th century. He describes how experienced fighters always chose seats where they could see the whole room. He calls it situational awareness." Jake pulled up more data. "And here, this is from Earth's Old West period. Gunfighters, lawmen, outlaws, they all had the same habit. They sat facing the door, backs to the wall. Some of them were killed because they broke this rule." "It goes back even further," Amy discovered. "Medieval warriors, ancient Roman soldiers, samurai from Japan. All of them had teachings about positioning and awareness. Always know your surroundings. Never be caught by surprise." Tony Blake entered the quarters carrying 3 cups of coffee. He set them down and looked at the screens. "So what have we learned?" he asked. "That this behavior is ancient," Jake replied. "It has been part of human warrior culture for thousands of years. Maybe tens of thousands. It is taught, learned, passed down through generations." "But why?" Tony asked. "What makes it so important?" Jake thought for a moment, then started typing commands into his console. "Computer, show me statistics on human combat effectiveness based on positioning." The AI processed the request and displayed results. The data was clear. Throughout human history, warriors who maintained awareness of their surroundings survived longer. Units that practiced good positioning won more battles. Individuals who could read a situation before it became dangerous lived while others died. "It is about survival," Amy said slowly. "But not running away. It is about surviving to fight effectively." "Exactly," Jake agreed. "Humans learned a long time ago that the warrior who sees danger first has a huge advantage. Not just in avoiding the danger, but in controlling it, managing it, defeating it." "So sitting at the back is not defensive," Tony realized. "It is offensive. It is about gathering information to act more effectively." "Right," Jake said. "From the back of a room, you can see everything. You can read body language. You can spot threats before they develop. You can identify opportunities others miss. It gives you control without appearing to take control." Amy pulled up another file. "And look at this. Modern police training, security training, intelligence training. They all teach the same principle. Observer positions should be where you can see without being the focus of attention. Because if everyone is watching you, you cannot watch them," Tony added. "Exactly," Jake confirmed. "The back position is powerful because it appears humble. Other species see us standing back and think we are being polite or passive. But we are actually in the strongest tactical position in the room." The 3 officers sat in silence for a moment, understanding finally clicking into place. "We need to explain this to Commander Jathic," Amy said. "He deserves a real answer." "Agreed," Jake said. "Let me put together a proper explanation. This is not just about human habit. This is about human tactical philosophy. About how we see the world, how we navigate danger, how we maintain control in uncertain situations." He started organizing the data they had collected. Military history, cultural practices, tactical training, survival statistics. All of it pointed to the same conclusion. Humans sat at the back because thousands of years of warfare had taught them a simple truth. The one who sees everything has the advantage. Not just the advantage of avoiding danger, but the advantage of understanding situations deeply, of reading people accurately, of making better decisions. It was not fear. It was not shyness. It was not even just tactics. It was a fundamental part of how humans approached any situation where outcomes mattered. "You know what is funny?" Tony said with a smile. "We are doing it right now. We are sitting in the back corner of your quarters, facing the door." Jake looked around and laughed. It was true. Even in his own private space, having a casual conversation with trusted friends, they had unconsciously arranged themselves in the optimal tactical position. "Old habits," Amy said with a shrug. "Not just habits," Jake corrected gently. "Wisdom. Passed down through countless generations of humans who survived because they learned to watch, to wait, to position themselves where they could see danger coming." He looked at the data on his screens, all the evidence of human tactical thinking throughout history. Then he looked at his friends, both unconsciously maintaining perfect situational awareness even while relaxing. "Commander Jathic thinks this is mysterious," Jake said. "But it is not a mystery. It is just humanity being what we have always been. Survivors. Watchers. People who learned long ago that the safest place is not where you cannot be hurt, but where you can see everything that might hurt you." "Should we schedule a meeting?" Amy asked. Jake nodded. "Tomorrow. I will explain everything we have learned. I think the commander will find it interesting. And I think understanding this about humanity will help him understand a lot of other things about us too. Like why we are so good in combat," Tony suggested. "Like why we notice things others miss," Amy added. "Like why we are dangerous even when we seem peaceful," Jake finished. "Because we are always watching. Always aware. Always ready." The meeting ended, and Jake prepared his presentation for the commander. Tomorrow he would explain the truth about human positioning. Tomorrow the galaxy would learn that what looked like simple habit was actually refined tactical doctrine, perfected over thousands of years of human history. And maybe, just maybe, other species would start to understand that when humans chose to stand at the back, they were not retreating from the center of power. They were occupying the true position of power, the place where they could see everything and everyone. The place where humans had always belonged. The conference room on the Celestial Harmony was smaller than the main assembly hall. Commander Jathic had chosen it deliberately. He wanted an intimate setting for this conversation, not a formal presentation. Captain Jake Morrison entered first, followed by Lieutenant Amy Brooks and Sergeant Kyle Rogers. Kyle was a combat instructor, a veteran of numerous battles, and someone who understood human tactical doctrine better than most. Jathic noticed immediately where they positioned themselves. Even in this small room with only 4 chairs around a simple table, the 3 humans chose seats that gave them a view of the door. They sat with their backs to the wall, relaxed but alert. "Thank you for meeting with me," Jathic began. "I hope you have had time to consider my question." "We have," Jake replied with a slight smile. "In fact, we have spent the last few days researching it. The answer is more interesting than I expected." "Please, I am eager to understand," the commander said, leaning forward. Jake glanced at Kyle, who nodded. The sergeant was the best person to explain the warrior aspect of this behavior. "Commander," Kyle began, "on Earth, we have a saying among soldiers and fighters. Never have your back to the door. It is one of the oldest rules of survival." "Why is the door so important?" Jathic asked. "Because that is where danger enters," Kyle explained simply. "For thousands of years, human warriors have known that the most dangerous position is having your back exposed to an entrance. You cannot see threats coming. You cannot react in time. You are vulnerable. But we are in a peaceful meeting," Jathic pointed out. "There is no danger here." "True," Kyle agreed. "But the habit runs deep. Human soldiers, police officers, security personnel, even civilians who have been in dangerous situations, they all learn this behavior. It becomes automatic. We do it without thinking." Amy spoke up. "It is not just about physical danger, Commander. It is about awareness. When you sit facing the room, you can see everything that happens. You can read people's faces, notice their body language, spot changes in the atmosphere." "Situational awareness," Jake added. "That is what we call it. Being fully aware of your surroundings at all times. It is a core principle of human tactical thinking." Jathic's eyes brightened with understanding. "So it is not about fear or escape. It is about information gathering. Exactly, Jake confirmed. A warrior who can see the whole battlefield makes better decisions than one who can only see what is directly in front of them. The same principle applies everywhere, not just in combat. Kyle leaned forward, his expression serious. Let me give you an example, Commander. In the old days on Earth, there were gunfighters. Men who lived by their skill with weapons. They had a rule: always sit where you can see the door, always keep your gun hand free, always position yourself so nobody can surprise you. What happened to those who broke this rule? Jothic asked. They died, Kyle said simply. There are famous stories of skilled fighters who were killed because they sat with their backs to the door. One moment of carelessness, one break from discipline, and they were gone. The commander sat back, processing this information. So this behavior is taught through stories, through examples of what happens when you fail to follow it. Yes, Amy said. But it is more than that. It is also about psychology. When you sit at the back of a room, other people do not feel threatened by you. You are not pushing forward, demanding attention, asserting dominance. You appear humble and respectful. But you are actually in the position of power, Jothic realized. Right, Amy agreed. We can see everything without appearing to watch. We can leave easily without causing disruption. We maintain control of our situation without making others uncomfortable. Jake pulled out a data tablet and displayed an image. It showed an ancient human warrior, sitting in a corner of a room, watching a doorway. This drawing is over 1,000 years old, Jake explained. It comes from a manual for samurai warriors in ancient Japan. It teaches the same principle we follow today. The wise warrior positions himself where he can see all approaches. Not because he expects attack, but because awareness itself is a form of power. He showed another image, this one from a different culture. This is from a Roman military text. Same teaching. The good soldier always knows what is behind him, beside him, in front of him. He never allows himself to be surprised. Fascinating, Jothic murmured. And this knowledge has survived for so long because it works. It works very well, Kyle confirmed. In my 30 years of military service, I have seen countless situations where situational awareness saved lives. Not dramatic battles or firefights, just everyday situations where someone noticed something wrong before it became a crisis. Can you give me an example? The commander asked. Kyle thought for a moment. 5 years ago, I was advising a mixed-species training exercise. I was standing at the back of the command center, my usual position. Everyone else was focused on the tactical displays, watching the simulation play out. What did you see? Jothic prompted. I saw a young technician at a rear console starting to panic, Kyle replied. She was looking at data that nobody else was watching. From where I stood, I could see her body language change, see her hands start to shake. I walked over and discovered that the enemy in the simulation had found a vulnerability in our defenses that the main displays were not showing. You were watching the people, not the screens, Jothic said. Exactly, Kyle said. The commanders at the front were watching data. I was watching people. Both are important, but sometimes the people tell you more than the data does. This is extraordinary, the commander admitted. What appears to be a simple habit is actually a sophisticated tactical doctrine. Would you like to see a demonstration? Jake offered. Jothic's interest piqued. A demonstration? How? The training exercise begins tomorrow, Jake explained. Let us show you what humans can observe from the back of a formation that others miss from the front. I would be very interested in that, the commander agreed. They spent the next hour discussing the details of the demonstration. Jothic asked many questions, and the humans answered each one patiently. The commander was beginning to understand that human military success was not just about courage or technology. It was about a completely different way of seeing and understanding tactical situations. As the meeting was ending, Jothic asked one final question. Captain Morrison, do you ever sit at the front of a room? Jake smiled. Sometimes, when the situation requires it. When I need to be the focus of attention, when I need to project authority, when my position at the front serves a specific purpose. But given a choice, I prefer the back. It feels right. It feels safe. It feels powerful. Safe and powerful, Jothic repeated. Most species would see those as opposites. You defend from a safe position, you attack from a powerful one. For humans, they are the same thing, Amy explained. The safest position is the one where you have the most information and the most options. That is also the most powerful position. We do not think of safety as hiding from danger, Kyle added. We think of it as being ready for danger. And the best way to be ready is to see it coming. The meeting ended, and the three humans left the conference room. Jothic watched them go, noticing how they moved through the corridor. They walked casually, but their eyes were always moving, always scanning, always aware of who was around them and where the exits were. It was not paranoia. It was not fear. It was simply how they lived. Constant awareness had become so natural to them that they did it without conscious thought. Officer Veldar appeared beside the commander. "Did the meeting go well?" "Better than I hoped," Jothic replied. "I finally understand the humans. Or at least, I understand this aspect of them." "What did you learn?" "That what looks like passive behavior is actually active preparation. That what seems like politeness is actually strategy. That humans are always watching and learning, even when they appear to be doing nothing." Veldar considered this. "That makes them dangerous." "It makes them survivors," Jothic corrected. "And yes, that does make them dangerous. But it also makes them excellent allies. They notice threats we miss. They see opportunities we overlook. Their constant awareness benefits everyone around them." The next day, the training exercise would begin. Jothic was looking forward to seeing human tactical thinking in action. But even now, he understood something important about humanity. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the smartest or the most advanced. But they had learned, through thousands of years of warfare and survival, to see more clearly than others. To read situations deeply. To position themselves where they could observe everything without drawing attention. It was a simple advantage. But in a complex galaxy full of competing interests and hidden dangers, that simple advantage might be the most valuable skill of all. The humans always sat at the back. And now Jothic understood that they were not hiding there. They were exactly where they needed to be. Watching. Waiting. Ready for whatever came through the door. 2 weeks had passed since the training exercises. Commander Jothic had been impressed by the human demonstration. He had watched Jake Morrison and his crew spot problems before they developed, notice patterns others missed, and maintain perfect awareness of their entire team. The commander had written a report recommending that other species study human tactical positioning. He believed the entire fleet could benefit from their methods. But theory was about to become practice in the most dramatic way possible. The emergency alarm shattered the quiet of the night shift. Red lights flashed throughout the celestial harmony. Officers rushed to their stations as the automated voice announced a crisis. A civilian convoy was under attack. The Void Reavers, the most feared pirates in this sector of space, had ambushed 12 transport ships carrying refugees and supplies. The convoy's distress signal was desperate. Jothic reached the command center within minutes. The Celestial Harmony was already moving, along with the ECS Defender and 12 other warships. The fleet would arrive at the ambush site in less than an hour. The command center was chaos. Officers from 6 different species crowded around the main tactical display, shouting information and suggestions. The Velothian admiral was trying to coordinate a response, but the noise and confusion made it difficult. Jothic looked toward the back of the command center. Sure enough, 3 humans stood there. Captain Jake Morrison, Lieutenant Amy Brooks, and Specialist Greg Turner. They were quiet, watching everything with calm focus. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the ambush site. The tactical displays showed the situation immediately. The Void Reaver ships were using some kind of new stealth technology. They kept appearing and disappearing on sensors, hitting the civilian ships from unexpected angles. "All ships, defensive formation around the convoy," the admiral ordered. "Protect the civilians." The fleet moved into position. But the Void Reavers were ready. They struck from multiple directions at once. 3 galactic warships took damage in the first minute of battle. The command center became even more chaotic. Officers were trying to track the enemy ships, but the stealth technology made it nearly impossible. Every time they locked onto a target, it vanished and appeared somewhere else. Jothic watched the main display, feeling frustrated. The Void Reavers were always one step ahead. It was like they knew what the fleet would do before it happened. Suddenly, Jake Morrison's voice cut through the noise. "Commander Jothic, look at your junior officers at the rear stations." Jothic turned. At the back of the command center, 3 young Craxian officers were working at their monitoring stations. They looked panicked. Their hands were shaking. They kept glancing at their screens and then at each other, fear clear in their body language. The commander had been so focused on the main tactical display that he had not noticed his own crew. But Jake, standing at the back of the room, had been watching the people instead of the screens. Amy Brooks was already moving. She rushed to the junior officer stations and looked at their displays. Her face went pale. "Commander," she shouted, "the Void Reavers have hacked into our communications. They have been listening to every tactical order for the past 15 minutes. The information was right there on the junior officers' secondary displays. A warning message had appeared 12 minutes ago, but in the chaos, nobody had noticed. The young officers had seen it, but were too frightened to interrupt their superiors. Except the humans had noticed. Because they were not watching the battle on the screens. They were watching the crew. That is how they knew our moves," Jothic said quietly. "They were listening to us plan everything." "Greg, shut down all standard communication channels," Jake ordered. "Switch to the encrypted backup system. Now." Greg Turner's fingers flew across his portable terminal. He was a communications specialist, and he knew exactly what to do. Within 30 seconds, he had cut the compromised channels and established new encrypted links through the ECS defender systems. "All ships, switch to emergency frequency Delta 7, the Admiral commanded. "Scramble all previous tactical plans. The enemy has been listening." The fleet adapted quickly. New orders went out on the secure channel. The Void Reavers, suddenly blind to the fleet's communications, lost their advantage. Their next attack was poorly coordinated. The galactic warships were ready this time. The battle turned in minutes. Without advanced knowledge of the fleet's tactics, the Void Reavers found themselves outmaneuvered and outgunned. 3 of their ships were destroyed. The rest fled into deep space. The civilian convoy was safe. The crisis was over. In the command center, the officers were celebrating their victory. But Jothic was not celebrating. He was thinking about what had just happened. The humans had saved the fleet. Not with weapons or ships or brilliant tactics. They had saved it by watching 3 scared junior officers that nobody else had noticed. Jothic walked to the back of the command center where Jake, Amy, and Greg were standing. The 3 humans looked tired but satisfied. "You saved us," the commander said simply. "We just noticed something," Jake replied with a shrug. "Anyone could have seen it." "But they did not," Jothic said. All those officers at the front, staring at the tactical displays, focused completely on the enemy ships. They missed what was happening right behind them. "But you 3, standing at the back, saw everything." "That is what we have been trying to explain," Amy said gently. "The back position gives you perspective. You can see the whole picture, not just one piece of it." Greg added quietly, "Those junior officers needed help. They knew something was wrong, but nobody was listening to them. We saw their distress and investigated." Jothic looked around the command center. He saw it differently now. The officers at the front were focused, efficient, skilled. But they could only see what was directly in their field of view. They had tunnel vision. The humans at the back could see everything. The main displays, yes, but also the crew, the room, the small details that others missed. "I am going to change our protocols," the commander decided. "From now on, every command center will have at least 2 officers positioned at the rear. Their job will be to watch the crew, not the displays. To notice what others miss." "Good idea," Jake approved. "Just make sure they understand they are not there to hide or avoid work. They are there because that position has strategic value." "I understand now," Jothic said. "This is not about comfort or habit. This is tactical doctrine refined over thousands of years of human warfare." The next day, There was a formal ceremony. The fleet admiral presented commendations to Jake Morrison, Amy Brooks, and Greg Turner for their actions during the battle. Officers from every ship in the fleet attended. Jothic watched the ceremony from his position near the front of the hall. He noticed that the three humans, even during their own award ceremony, had positioned themselves at the back of the stage. They could see the entire audience. They were aware of every exit. They maintained perfect situational awareness even while being honored. The admiral announced the new protocol. It would be called the Morrison Protocol. In every command center, observation officers would be stationed at the rear with the specific duty of watching for problems that others might miss. After the ceremony, officers from many species approached the humans to ask questions. They wanted to learn more about situational awareness, about tactical positioning, about the philosophy behind standing at the back. Jothic found Jake standing alone for a moment, looking out a viewport at the stars beyond. "Captain Morrison," the commander said, "I wanted to thank you personally. You have taught the entire fleet something valuable." "We just did what came naturally," Jake replied. "What any human would do. That is what makes it so remarkable," Jothic said. "For your species, advanced tactical awareness is natural. Instinctive. You do not even think about it. Because we have been doing it for thousands of years," Jake explained. "Every generation teaches the next. Watch your surroundings. Never be surprised. Position yourself where you can see everything." These lessons are passed down from parent to child, from teacher to student, from veteran to recruit. "And now you are teaching us," Jothic said. Jake smiled. "I hope it helps. The galaxy is a dangerous place. We all need every advantage we can get." They stood together in silence for a moment, watching the stars. Then Lieutenant Amy Brooks approached them. "Captain, we should head back to the Defender," she said. "The crew is waiting." Jake nodded. He shook hands with Commander Jothic, then turned to leave. Amy fell into step beside him. "Think they will ever stop staring at us?" Amy asked quietly. Jake glanced around the ceremony hall. Sure enough, dozens of alien officers were watching the humans, studying their movements, trying to understand them. "Probably not," Jake replied with a grin. "But at least now they understand. We are not hiding at the back. We are exactly where we need to be." Back on the ECS Defender, the crew gathered in the mess hall to celebrate. Danny Carter, Lisa Hayes, Kevin Wright, and the other crew members congratulated their captain and the others on their commendations. Jothic watched from the Celestial Harmony as the human ship prepared to depart for its next assignment. He thought about everything he had learned over the past few weeks. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the smartest or the most technologically advanced. But they had something else. Something that came from thousands of years of warfare, survival, and hard-won wisdom. They knew how to watch, how to wait, how to position themselves where they could see everything without being the center of attention. They understood that true power came not from standing at the front and demanding to be seen, but from standing at the back and seeing everything. It was a simple lesson. But in a complex and dangerous galaxy, that simple lesson might be the difference between survival and disaster. The galaxy had learned something important about humanity. When humans chose to sit at the back, they were not retreating. They were not hiding. They were not being polite or passive. They were taking the high ground, the strategic position, the place where they could see everything and everyone, the place where they had always belonged. And now the rest of the galaxy understood. When humans sat at the back, they were exactly where they needed to be.